Hello again, everyone. Joe Ramstead back talking a little bit more about parliamentary procedure today. Feel free to listen up. We're going to be talking a little bit about motions. So part two at a glance. Today we're going to have motions, an overview. So we're going to talk about the significance of motions, and then we're going to talk about the roadmap of motions, kind of the life cycle from point A to point B, and then the main classes of motions. So we have main, privilege, subsidiary, incidental, and motions that bring a question back again before the assembly. So here we go. Motions, an overview. Members make motions to transact or get through business. Generally, in order to make motions, members must rise, gain recognition from the chair, and begin making their motion with the words, "I move." So later on, I'm going to upload a little bit of a demonstration video, hopefully, and we'll walk through about how these pieces of the puzzle fit in together so you can actually see the actual life cycle of a motion enacted by some of our classmates. The motion can then be seconded. If a motion is seconded, it shows that other members are interested in discussing or hearing about the topic. If you second a motion, you don't necessarily agree with it, you just want to discuss it a little bit more, have some questions about it before you vote on it or whatnot. Discussed. So after a motion is seconded, if need be, if the motion is then debatable, members can discuss the motion twice in a given meeting per day. We'll talk about this a little bit more later on. And next, the motions are voted on. Motions requiring a majority vote require 51% of the assembly to vote in favor and are usually conducted by voice, by saying aye or nay. Motions requiring a 2/3 vote, on the other hand, are conducted by a rising vote, and it's counted. So that way we can determine mathematically whether the motion passes or not, because it's kind of hard to determine whether or not a 2/3 vote passes, because voice vote will be very hard to conduct with. So motions and overview continued. Here's the general roadmap or life cycle of motions. So first the motion's made. So let's say I move that we sell oranges. Easy. The motion is then seconded. So then somebody will call out second right after I make the motion. And then the motion will be restated by the chair. So the chair would say, it has been moved and seconded that we sell oranges. And then they would say, is there any discussion? So then they would open to the assembly. The assembly could discuss the topic and share a little bit more information about the motion and whether they agree with it or disagree with it. And finally, the motion is voted on. And in this, we are able to take a majority vote because the main motion requires a majority vote by voice. So then the president would say, all those in favor say aye. And then everybody in favor would say aye. And then all opposed, same sign, and they would say no. So, or those who oppose would say no. So that's kind of the general roadmap of main motions and motions as a whole. A little meme at the bottom. She seconded the motion that I proposed, so I guess you could say things are getting pretty serious. Kind of funny. And then, obviously, I also forgot this one. Motion either passes or fails. So a main motion will pass or fail. Notice how in parentheses it mentions if needed or if permissible. Some motions, as I mentioned previously, don't need to be seconded, can't be discussed, do not need to be voted on, and aren't necessarily passed or failed. We'll talk a little bit more about this in a future video, but just know that for now. So, as I mentioned previously, there are technically five main classes of motions. We're going to cover each in class briefly. So, these are the four motion categories. So we have privilege motions, subsidiary, incidental, main motions, and motions that bring a question back again before the assembly. So these motions here, as you can see, are listed in order of decreasing precedence or rank. So privilege motions are ones that are really important and they have to be heard first, and then we go down that list in order for those different classes of motions. This will make a little bit more sense in a moment. Precedence, as I mentioned, is the ranking in which a motion is presented. A motion with high precedence will be transacted first. So those will be your privilege motions and your subsidiary motions. Those with low precedence will be like your main motions and motions that bring a question back again before the assembly. Yielding, a motion that has low precedence yields to a motion with higher precedence. This means that main motions yield to all other types of motions. So quick note, I'm going to give you a lot of information, so just hold tight. The purpose of the following slides is not to scare you, but to inform about the many different parliamentary tools available for you to use in meetings. Don't feel like you have to memorize all of these and know all of them by heart by the end of this, because you probably won't. So if you have questions or would like to learn more about any of these motions, feel free to let me know. Use any online resources posted and or consult Robert's Rules of Order, newly revised. So here we go. Main motions. The purpose of main motions is to bring business before the assembly. So the only motion within this class is the main motion itself. Privilege motions. The purpose is to grant special rights or privileges to a member or group of members in an assembly. So the motions include fix a time in which to adjourn, recess, raise a question of privilege, and call for the orders of the day. So I'm going to briefly describe each of these. Fix a time in which to adjourn would create a new meeting before the next scheduled meeting to discuss more information or a motion more deeply. Adjourn would just simply end the meeting. So you can say, I move to adjourn, and then the meeting could end if it's passed. Recess just takes a little bit of a break in the meeting. Usually it's about 5 to 10 minutes, and there are many reasons why you could recess. It could be simply just to take a bathroom or stretch break, or it could be just to provide some informal consultation that isn't heard in front of everybody. You could just talk with your peers about how you feel about certain ideas. Raise a question of privilege, that would be if you have to use the bathroom and it doesn't really affect the entire assembly. You can just pop up and say, I raise a question of privilege, and then the president would say, state your question, and then you would say, may I please use the restroom? I really have to go bad. And then they would say whether or not you can go. It's not necessarily voted on either. And finally, call for the orders of the day is just a motion where a member feels that you're getting a lot off track from the agenda or the set of materials that you have to be going through for the day. So they just say, I move to call for the orders of the day to this special order. Or, this is where Parley gets really fun, if there is a motion that is put out there at a previous meeting and it's like, I move that we discuss apples at 3 p.m. on Thursday, and it's 3 p.m. on Thursday, you can start talking about apples because that is an order of the day that was previously brought up at a different meeting and postponed to that particular time. It can be a very technical motion, so I wouldn't really worry about that one, and it isn't used very often within major assemblies, so don't get too caught up on that one. Subsidiary motions. The purpose is to dispose of or treat main motions and their counterparts. So here's a little laundry list. So lay on the table. This is a motion that you're going to use to just push something off to a different day because of some dire or important business or event that happens. One reason why you might want to lay a motion on the table is if you just feel that it's getting late at night and everybody just wants to go home and nobody's really paying attention. It might be best just to lay it on the table due to that urgent manner. Previous question is a motion where you feel that debate is getting very, very lengthy and you just want to say, I move the previous question so that the motion goes straight to a vote and there's no more debate or discussion on the motion. Limit or extend the limits of debate. This is a great tool that's used when you feel that people should be able to talk about a motion more deeply or more restrictively by the bylaws that are put forth. So usually most assemblies only allow a member to speak for 10 minutes up to 2 times per motion per day. So if you feel that there should be people who have the opportunity to speak as many times as they want, you can remove the limits of debate and let people talk as freely as they would like. Or on the counterpart, you can limit, so somebody can only talk 1 time per motion. Postpone to a certain time or definitely is when you move a motion to some other time and you set forth a time. So like I move to postpone this motion to our next meeting regularly scheduled for next Thursday or something to that sort. Commit or refer is when you make a motion, go to a special committee or some type of committee that is formed within the assembly to look at the matter a little bit more and either act upon it or report back to the next meeting. Amend is when you want to simply change the motion or in some way just reword something to make it a little bit more clear for the assembly. Or one thing that you could do is just simply change like a quantity or a date, and that's great. Amend is a great tool for that as well. And finally, this is one of my favorites, postpone indefinitely. If you think that an idea is really bad, you can move to postpone indefinitely, and it will be gone forever. Great. Incidental motions. The purpose is to consider business that is in some way related to the assembly, but not necessarily the main topic subjected to discussion. This category gets a little bit fuzzy, so just hang with me a little bit. Motions in this class include appeal, which is when you disagree with the ruling of the chair. You just call out an appeal. Division of the assembly is when you feel that a voice vote wasn't very conclusive and you feel that the chair could have miscounted or misjudged the views of the assembly. You just simply call out for a division and then they will be able to take a counted vote. Objection to the consideration of a question can be applied to a main motion when you simply when the member simply just states the motion, if it's very controversial, you can just rise and object to it, so it is no longer discussed if it is passed. But that requires a 2/3 vote, so it's kind of difficult to pass. Parliamentary inquiry, that is a tool that is used when you do not understand what is being discussed or the parliamentary sense of it. So if you don't know what type of a vote a motion requires and you want some more basic information about that, parliamentary inquiry is a great tool to use. Point of order, when somebody really screws up or they don't follow parliamentary procedure adequately, you can rise to a point of order and call that person out on it and make remedy the situation a little bit. The parliamentarian can consult the president at this point if there is any discrepancy between if a member is in the wrong or in the right. Suspend the rules is another motion that is used when there's an event coming up, and there's a rule in the bylaw that would prohibit an activity within that event, and you can just simply suspend a rule for that event. I know personally at Farmhouse Fraternity, we have a parlor. We're not able to wear our shoes in the parlor, and we recently, or we're not able to have food in the parlor, and whenever we have like a Super Bowl party, we usually suspend the rules so that we can bring food into the parlor during the Super Bowl game and that people aren't breaking the rules and not getting fined or whatnot. And finally, withdraw is a motion that you use when you just simply want to take away the motion that you previously brought up or another member. It's a very complicated motion, so we're not going to talk about it too much. Vote. So this is another great meme too. Vote on the bill is unanimous. Yells division. This is an example where division is a very weird tool to use, because if everybody is obviously in favor of a motion and you yell division, you're just going to be wasting time and the president could call you out of order, so don't do that. Finally, motions that bring a question back again before the assembly. This is a pretty complicated section too, but the purpose is to bring back or reevaluate a previous decision. So the three main motions in this area are reconsider, rescind, and take from the table. So in a reconsider, you're simply just going to bring a motion back and you're going to reconsider your vote on it and why it passed or failed. So in order to present a reconsider, you have to have been on the prevailing side, which means that if a motion passed and you don't think it should be passed anymore, or you want to reconsider some element of it, you had to have voted in favor of it in order to bring it back before the assembly. And the opposite is true. If a motion failed and you want to bring it back and possibly pass it, you would have to have been on the, you would have had to have voted no on it. Rescind is a motion where you bring something back, kind of similar to reconsider. However, you are simply trying to amend it or remedy it in some way. That one gets very dicey, so I wouldn't worry too much about it. I haven't had to use that too much outside of a competitive setting. And finally, take from the table is used in conjunction with the motion lay on the table. In order to take something from the table, it's got to be there. So take from the table is just a motion that you use when there's a motion on the table and you want to bring it up for discussion. So here are some review questions. I'll just run through those real quick. What is a motion? Can you identify the various steps or draw a roadmap for the life of a given motion? True or false, all motions require a second. True or false, all motions require voting from the assembly. True or false, all motions are debatable in their original form. Can you identify the major classes of motions, and can you identify an example from each class? And if I wanted to change the words in a main motion, what additional motion or motions could I make to accomplish this? As always, please let me know if you have any questions about parliamentary procedure or anything that I discussed. I hope that this all made some sense, and thanks for sticking with me.